Welcome back, my turtles, to another art video with Foxfit Crafts. Today's video I am going to be showing y'all how I make my own paper. Let me move this out of the way. So as you can see here, I have some examples of my own paper that I make. This is recycled material paper, and it is a little bit thicker, a little textured, and I'm gonna go through and show you how I make it. So I actually make my paper from old recycled paper. I have access to a shredder, so I will run through old bills, statements, anything like that, paper from my comic book blanks. So I just shred them and save them up. I also use just old milk jugs and trying to, recycle, reduce, reuse as much as possible. So I will fill up a jug with the paper and then add water to it and let it sit for about 24 hours to soften and really kind of help the paper to become a mush. So once the water is added, may add a little bit more paper. I don't really have a ratio or science for this. I just kind of whatever feels right. And we're soaking it to try to create a pulp from the paper, so to soften those fibers and reset them. After it is sat for 24 hours, I will pour the mixture into a blender and throw some more in there and blend it up into, you want it the consistency of buttermilk in my experience. If it's the consistency of a smoothie, it's normally too thick. So, and then I will put on my lid and start up the blender. Totally forgot I don't have that top part anymore. But after it blends up, I will then start the paper process. You guys will see in this that I did make my first batch too thick. While it's blending, you see that smoothie appearance, and so it's definitely what you don't want. You want it the consistency of buttermilk again. Once I have blended it all up, I will then add it to my pan. I use these old turkey pans. I don't remember where I got them. I probably pulled them out of the trash somewhere. But way too thick. See how clumpy that is? Way too thick for paper making. So I'm just gonna add some water and then stir it up, try to water it down. It is more difficult to stir in this state, so I recommend just ahead of time blending it with more water than paper, so you're not having to backtrack like this, because this is way more difficult than if I just let the blender handle it. So after you get your paper smooth, you just use your screen. So I have these little frames. Some of them are frames that I have glued my own mesh netting to. Some of them, they were at a craft store. They were supposed to be you paint on the mesh. I don't know, but they were super inexpensive. I want to say they were $1, maybe $1.19. And so I figured I could use them for this instead of painting on them. But you can definitely make your own. I have some that are my own as well. But But from there, you're just putting your pulp mixture on the frame and letting it strain through. I did run into the issue where these pans are too small for these frames, so I end up switching halfway throughout my video. Here's one that I made myself. And so once you've put your pulp on there, let it strain, you're just gonna flip it and tap, 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 and remove the frame. And from there, you're just gonna let it dry. So I switched to my bigger plastic pan, moved my little metal pans to the side, stir up my pulp paper mixture, use my frame, dip it in, and yeah, way easier now that I'm using the larger pan. You just let the water strain out. Now, with this, I would probably recommend have a couple different frames because I tend to get impatient and I'm tapping them, and if you guys have watched any of my other videos, you know that I struggle with, patience and time management. I like things to have quick results, so I'm working on that. But this, by having multiples of it, it allows me to work on another one while one drains out and dries. If you live in a super hot area, you can put them outside. I was making these one of the days that it was raining outside, but some of my others I will just go and lay out in the sun and let them dry as well. I have another one, just going to set that over here to let it strain. And you can make your paper thicker, you can make it thinner, just depending on how many times you want to run it through this mixture. You can also add dye, food coloring or seeds or anything else to these as well. Dried flowers, whatever you want to add to your mixture. I apologize for the shakiness of all this. I am trying to make my paper and record with one hand. Now you do want to dump them or flip them off of here before they fully dry, because if you look at this one, I let it dry outside over 24 hours and it stuck. So way more difficult to remove. Still a nice piece of paper, but more difficult to get off the screen. But now this one, still wet, was able to flip it very easily. If you have any rough edges, you just kind of pat those down while it's still damp, and then as it dries, it'll flatten out. So for the paper, it's not something I like to use on my markers. It's super absorbent. It will suck the life out of them. All different thicknesses. I haven't figured out exactly what thickness I prefer, but has this rough texture to it, so that's also very difficult for my markers. But I feel like watercolors would do very well with it. I use mine to write quests and stuff on it, because it has that kind of old-time paper aesthetic to it. Those rough edges and everything else, so it does have an artistic charm to it. I just haven't figured out what I want to use it regularly for, but I mean, I collect so much paper anyway that I definitely want to try to incorporate it more in my art. But from there, let me know in the comments below if you guys make your own paper. I'd love to know about it. What do you use it for? And thank you everyone for tuning in.